Okay, hello everyone. Today we are jumping into another topic in our N4 slash pre-intermediate level. We are going to talk about tame and tameni. And then if we have time at the end, we're going to talk about a bit of a comparison with tame and one more that has a very similar setup and meaning. But let's jump into these. There's actually a couple of different ways you can use these. Most people learn only one of them at this level, and then they learn the second one a bit later on. But instead of separating them out, we're going to teach them both at the same time. Now, the page that's in front of us now, it kind of throws everything at you at once, but it means a lot of different things. It can mean because of, due to. It can also be used, this is the more common one, I feel, for the purpose of, for the sake of, in order to. You're not going to remember all that, but don't worry because we're going to dive into both of them. The first one we're going to look at is actually the less common of the two. And I obviously don't have data for this, but I would say I hear this one 20% of the time that I hear tame being used. I hear the other one that we'll do in the second half of the lesson 80% of the time. So this first one means because of or due to. And in that sense, we are using it to mark the reason or the cause for something happening. Because of this, due to this. And in fact, if I had to choose one, if I had to say you only can remember this one, I would say due to. It means both, but it just, in my head, I feel like this one matches a bit better with due to, and you'll see why. Now, the way you use it is fairly simple. You can see all the different usage styles right in front of us. If there's a noun, you're going to have that no in there. So yuki no tame ni. If it's an adjective, it's either just the e adjective or you need that na to connect the adjective with tame. If it's a verb, you just need the verb in front of it. And that's it. Now, you might be thinking, why is there ni on two of them, but not the other two? Ni is almost a stylistic choice. It doesn't inherently add anything extra or suggest something. So feel free to add them or not add them. I feel, again, this is just my gut feeling after being in Japan for years, that the because of, due to meaning, I tend to see tame more. Whereas for the other one, for example, in order to, for, etc., I see both. But this one, I feel like I see tame more. But again, it's just, I can't back that up. It's just my feeling. But let's look at what these would mean. So these are all marking the meaning, the cause, or not the meaning, excuse me, the cause or the reason for something. So it could be because of the snow, because it's cheap, because it's dangerous, because I or someone lives somewhere. Now, let's look at some examples, and it'll clear up a bit. With this, now again, tame comes after the reason or the cause. And usually, the whole tame chunk, whatever it happens to be, nani nani no tame, nani nani tame, it tends to come at the top of the sentence. You will see an example later where it comes at the end, but it typically comes at the beginning. And this top one has to be the most common one usage, I think, in all of the Japanese language, especially in the winter. Yuki no tame, densha ga okureta. So, due to the snow, because of the snow, the train was late. And actually, I'll mention that after. The second one, because that bag is expensive, a lot of people are able to buy it. A lot of people can buy it. Now, I'm going to give you 2 more examples, and then we're going to come back and look at them a bit more. But let me get all these examples out first. 危険なため、そこに行かないでください. Dangerous, so please don't go there. And 日本に住んでいたために日本語が上手になった. Because I lived in Japan, my Japanese got better. Now, again, there's a lot of I feels in today's lesson, but I feel like that if we jump back a couple of panels, Renshu lets us know that tame itself does not hold any inherent positive or negative meaning or nuance. It's not, oh, I'm complaining, so I use tame. Or this is a great thing, so I use tame. However, I feel like on average, it is used more often for negative events, negative things, such as the first sentence. Because of the snow, or due to the snow, the train was late. And it's because of that, at least to me, I'm not even suggesting you should think this way. To me, I tend to think of it as due to more often, because I feel like due to is used more in English to note a negative reason for something. It's not an excuse. I mean, it's, it's something that actually happened. And you will often hear, if you're riding trains in Japan, you will hear this a lot. Not a lot, but if there's any kind of delay, they will often use this to describe the delay. They're not making an excuse. They're just saying due to construction, due to the snow, due to the heavy winds, it is, the train is late, or we cannot start yet. So please wait a bit. No, sorry, not yet. You can type it out because everyone else's, I'm speaking to someone in the voice chat, everyone else's voices don't get included on the video. And so only we can hear you right now. Anyone that watches the video in the future will not be able to hear you. So if you type it out, great. Thank you. No problem. But anyway, again, this is just a feeling for how I've seen things, that it tends to be explaining the reason for something not going the way it typically would go. It can be used in these other forms, but I don't see it as often. And the person that just jumped into the voice chat and who is typing something out, they are, as you might have noticed by the little flag next to their name, one of our native speakers in the server. So looks like they'll have something to add to it. Now, I'm going to keep going while they're typing. And there we go. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. I think not excuse in the sense that excuse sounds, at least in English, excuse sounds more like a reason that's not legitimate. Like it's not, excuse sounds closer to, I'm using this, but it's because I don't want to accept the punishment, the blame for it. But I'd say more like a formal reason. Yes, definitely. Because you hear it more often in more formal language. You don't hear it quite as often, say, between two people talking, on the street. You'll hear things like datta or dakara or whatever. The other cause and effect elements that we've learned up until now. But this one you hear more in formal announcements or statements. A statement in the sense that people don't really make statements. I mean, I know technically they do, but I don't say, oh, how were you today? You say, oh, I had many statements. We don't say that. But you might say, oh, yes, the company made a statement today. Or the train operator made a statement about the train, stopping. It's more of a formal declaration. And you hear that with tame a lot. So that was an excellent thing to point out. Thank you so much. Let me jump back to where, oh, whoops. There we go. Too far. Okay. So, as I mentioned, tame tends to come at the top of the sentence. But not always. It is possible, because Japan's such a flexible language, it is possible to move it to the back. But because it's emphasizing the reason, I mean, it's attached to the reason, it's attached to the cause. You tend to, and you're using that as not an excuse, but a reason for why something is the way it is. You know, the train is stopped or the train is late because it's snowing. So, because you want to keep people from getting angry or you want to explain it to them, you mention the reason first. You say, so there's some snow, and because of that, the train is late. You know, I'm sorry. Top of the sentence means beginning, or top of anything. When you refer to position, usually means the beginning. However, you can put it at the end. So just like the example on the example below, 電車が遅れたのは雪のためです. Now, this one, I mentioned this depending on the topic that we're doing. This is one of those ones that you will probably hear 95%, and you might use yourself 5%. It is not one that I feel that people, when I talk about generic people, us, we don't use it that often. But you will hear it from time to time. Now this next one you definitely will use. And this is the more common of the two. So let's jump right into it. Okay. This is the one that if you've learned either of these, you've probably learned this one. And it can be used, you see it translated in a number of different ways. And it might be for the purpose of, for the sake of, or in order to. Another way you can think of it is it is used to mark the goal or the purpose of some action. In a sense, it is also the reason for what's coming later on in the sentence. It is a reason for what's coming on later in the sentence, but I think of it more in the sense of it is a goal, or it's because of this that I'm choosing to do this. So you usually, compared to before, the first one that we saw, and let's see if I can jump back real fast. If you look at this top sentence, Yuki no tame densha ga okureta. This is being used to explain something that has already happened. And that's the most common way that you see it. You see it as a way to mark a reason to explain something else. It's like, yeah, the train is late. Why? It's because of this. However, for this one, it is more often used to focus on your explanation for why you chose to do something. There's more volition in this one, where it's saying, for the purpose of, and we'll jump to the actual examples, you know, for the sake of my friend, or in order to cook, for the purpose of cooking, you could say in different ways, or in order to not forget, you are marking this as a goal, as a reason for some actions that you take. It's where you put, you know, you say, I'm going to pass the JLPT, so I need to do these things. That's actually a bad example. Let me say, I need to go to Japan, or I want to go to Japan, so in order to do that, I need a passport. I need to save up money, etc., etc. So let's look at some actual examples. A few different examples, and you'll see that the English translation will change ever so slightly for each of them. So the first one, 友達のためチョコを作った. I made some, and I'm going to say it, I made some chocolates for my friends. I made some chocolates for the sake of my friend. or friends. You can word it slightly differently. But think of it this way, step back from the English a bit and say, I'm looking at my friends, that's my goal. My friend is the focus of this action. Okay, I've got friends, so I'm going to make chocolate for them. Now, there might be an underlying, I want to make them happy or whatever, but, that's not mentioned. It's not necessarily a good or bad thing, but usually because it's a goal, you're focusing on positive actions in order, and not in the sense of good, so to speak, but in the sense of in order to accomplish something. Or you might say in order, or for the purpose, or with the goal of cooking, in order to cook, let's go buy some vegetables. Again, you have this goal. This is what you're looking at. This is my end state. To get to that, I need to buy some vegetables. Let's go buy some vegetables. Now, this one is a really interesting example, and we're going to come back to it. It's worth talking about a lot. And in fact, today's lesson is not particularly long, so we're going to do a bit of a deep dive on this. But excuse me for 1 minute. Excuse me. This one, 忘れないためにメモを取る. So, in order to not forget, I had to go buy something yesterday, and I knew I would not remember the size of this light fixture I had to buy. So in order to not forget the size of it, I wrote it down. I took a note, or I will take a note. And this one will be, again, at the top, although you do sometimes hear it, especially when you keep it simple. You don't mention what you're actually doing, but you might say something like this. はい、これはあなたのためですよ. This is for you. Something, and in this case, you're showing them something that you did for their benefit. So I could picture this sentence being, let's say they are starting school and they need to go on the bus. And so you went ahead and got them a bus pass. And you said, it's for you. It's for your sake. I got this bus pass. Here you go. It's for you. あなたのためですよ. So with all these, we are taking a goal, a focus, and we're talking about actions that will lead to the accomplishment of whatever that is. So let's practice a bit. This one's actually relatively easy to practice. So I already said this, but I didn't say it in Japanese. So this will give you a chance to use the answers I said earlier. How about this? 日本に行くために in order to go to Japan, tell me some things you would do. So there's your goal, to go to Japan. A lot of you probably, if I said go to Japan now, you probably couldn't. Why? Because there are certain things you haven't done, maybe certain things you haven't bought, for example, or you don't own yet, you don't possess yet. So what are some things that you would do in order to go to Japan? Now, I wrote the first half of the sentence. You don't need to rewrite it. And we don't need to do any of the fancy, I need to do this, I need to do that. Just keep it simple. Say, like, in order to go to Japan, I will do this. I will do that. I see a number of people typing, so we'll just give them some time. And if you need some hints, I threw in some hints, English hints. Now, there are going to be some answers that don't quite fit, but I'm not going to say that for now because it's a bit too early. So some of you might be thinking, oh, you don't really use Tom Many for that, but we will get into that in the back half of the lesson, so don't worry about it. But right now, we're focusing on I gave you the first half of the sentence. And usually, if you're saving up money, tameru is the one that you hear most often. So, well, let me write it in kanji. Matomeru is usually written just in hiragana. I saw that kanji and I thought, what is that? What is that kanji? It's usually written just in hiragana. So I see a few people answering. Someone said save up money, get their luggage together. Sure. I wouldn't say study Japanese because that's not a requisite for going to Japan. It's like, if you tried to go to Japan, would they say, did you study Japanese? Oh, you didn't. I see. Get off the plane. It would help you enjoy it more. And that actually ties into the next thing we're going to talk about. But tameni is used for explicit actions that are taken in order to accomplish that goal. Kind of in a yes-no sense. In a, if I do these, yes, I can do this action. Or, for example, the example that's still on the screen, if I do this, I will not forget. So gather, take off from work, get on the plane. Sure, it's a very literal. Yes, I do need to do that. Get on the plane in order to go to Japan. Anything else? Okay. Now, I would highly recommend, not now, but I'd recommend afterwards, jump into Renshu. And mine is a bit of a mess just because my account is the main account on Renshu. But if you go into the dictionary and you search for tameni, there's tons of sentences. And you will see a bit of what I mean, that a lot of the tameni that refers to the because of, due to, you will see negative things being talked about. And you'll also see examples of the ones that we I just talked about now. And your sentence is close, but not quite there. It's close enough to where here's what's important with Japanese, I feel, and all languages, is this is going to sound strange coming from a teacher, but who cares about being correct? That should be a that's nice, but being correct is not requisite for being fluent. Being correct helps you be fluent, but you don't need it. As long as they understand what you're saying, then your communication gets across. I wouldn't say it makes you look. I tend to say stick with simpler things and then slowly try out new stuff. But if you try too many new things at once, there's a chance that they will not understand you. But simpler sentences tend to work better until you get a grasp, and then you slowly start experimenting. In the same way that if you cook, you like cooking, you usually probably don't add 6 different new ingredients at once. You have something you like to make, and you say, okay, today I'm going to add a little extra garlic and see how that goes. But you won't add garlic and then double this ingredient and then cut that ingredient, do that one, because it's hard to see the result when so many things change at once. Now, real fast, let me just show you. I was using the wrong window. I apologize. But yeah, if you look in Tameni, here you can see all the sentences that are here. And there's 100 pages. There's so many of them. So there's plenty here. There's some with audio available. But you can always mouse over or tap everything to see what it's referring to. Now, let's dive into a slightly more complicated topic, but we have time today because it's a bit of a shorter lesson, and I really think this will help you grasp what's going on. So 1 minute, let me get things ready. Okay, so I've hinted at this a bit, but I'd like you to think about tameni in a slightly different way. Tameni is used, I'm typing this this is why I'm speaking slowly. I'm typing it as I speak it. Tameni is used for when you're using it for a goal. Tameni is used for a goal where the actions that you describe are ones that, unless something insane happens, unless something crazy happens, the actions will let you accomplish that goal. Now, let me give you a few examples of that. So we were just talking about Japan. Okay. No one mentioned this sentence, so in order to go to Japan, you need a passport. You need a passport. Well, let's just throw visas to the side. Let's not worry about visas. Let's just say if you have a passport, you can get into Japan. Now, I'm not talking about the sense of, oh, well, you also need money, you also need a ticket. I'm saying in terms of the passport being present or not present, if you have the passport, now, unless you're a terrorist, then they're not going to look at your passport and turn you away. The passport is, with a passport, you are relatively assured that you can get into the country. Let me give you another example, a slightly simpler one. I'm going to stick with the same form I did. It's not do, have. I mean, I guess you could think of it that in the sense of have to do, must do. It doesn't really have that have to do sense in it, but you're going to see why I'm making this why I'm focusing on this have to, must to. この映画を見るためにチケットが必要です。So you go to the movie theater and there's a movie you want to see. In order to see the movie, you need a ticket. Now, if you buy the ticket, can you see the movie? Yes. Now, if you die, okay, you're not going to be able to see the movie. If if you take the ticket and then you throw it away, you can't see the movie. But most people understand that if you buy a ticket, they will let you in to see the movie. That's a reasonable assumption. So why am I focusing on this? This strong link between this action and this goal. Let's take a look at this. Let's take a look at this example. Let's say one of you, doesn't matter who, wants to get into a university. And we're going to call the university A Daigaku. You want to get into A Daigaku. So real fast, and I need to step away for a minute, but you can write this in English, you can write this in Japanese, doesn't matter. In order, I'm not looking for grammar, I'm just looking for information. In order to get into a university, let's say it's a pretty good university, what do you need to do? What do you need to do to get into a university, this good university in whatever country you happen to live in? Just tell me. What are all the things that you can do to get into a university? It can be in English, it can be in Japanese. Don't focus on the grammar, just give me the things that you can do, and I'll be right back. Okay, I've returned. I see some realistic and some somewhat cynical answers here. So, get good grades, graduate high school, high status, pass the test, apply, study a lot. Okay, these are all good things. So let me ask you. I'm going to take the first one. Get good grades. Let's say I get perfect grades. I get perfect grades and I apply to a university. Will they let me in? What do you think? I get perfect grades. Will they let me in? All right, I'm getting some different answers. Sure is not really an answer. Tell me yes or no. So the two of you that said yes, you're telling me that if I get perfect grades, they will let me in 100%? Ah, it's changing. We don't know. Now, will good grades help me have a better chance of getting in? Yes. But there's no guarantee. That's where the change comes in. Is with a lot of things, there are no guarantees that this action will lead to this result. So you almost never see this. Now this might work if you were talking about being accepted, but for example, you need to apply for classes, you need to pay for tuition, things like that. But this sentence, I'm going to take the example that, let me finish this up. 大学に入るためにたくさん勉強します。Now, you all just told me, correctly, I might add, that if you, just because you study a lot doesn't mean you'll get into a university. Same thing goes with the JLPT, the Japanese language proficiency test. There is nothing you can do, nothing that will guarantee that you pass that test. There's nothing you can do. Now, there's a lot that you can do that will make your chances better. But even passing a mock test 100% does not, you can't take the mock test and show it to them and they'll say, okay, you pass. All that's doing is pushing the percentage, the chance up. It's making it a better situation for you. Tameni is used when there's a tight link between the action and the goal being reached. You buy a ticket, you get to see the movie. You have a passport, and we're not talking about getting into the plane. I'm just saying the entering Japan or not entering Japan. You have a passport, they will let you go into Japan. So what do? In English, we would say in order to get into a good university, you need to study a lot. This is completely natural. This is completely natural English. It's not certain 100%. It's unless something crazy happens, then yes. So more or less 100%. So what do we use for things that aren't guaranteed? It's not in this lesson, but it's such a good fit, and we have time, that I want to tell you about it. There is another grammar expression that is in N4, so we'll get to it eventually, and it's called yoni. It is often translated, one of the ways it's translated is this, in the hopes of. What does hope mean? Hope is something that you wish for, but you cannot guarantee. Something you wish for, you cannot guarantee it. So let's go back to we were talking about the university before, but let's just switch over to the JLPT. JLPTを合格するように. In the hopes of passing the JLPT, or in the hopes of getting into university, what can you do? Now there's lots of things we can put back there. You can so the JLPT, talk to Japanese people, study, use Renshu, use Bunpro, read manga, make a journal, so many different things. None of those guarantee it. But they're all done in the hopes of that goal being accomplished. So if you're doing something where you are hoping for something and you're working towards that goal, you use yoni. So it could be passing the test. It could be getting a job in Japan. There's nothing you can do that'll guarantee that. But if you want to, someone was saying before, I need to study. In order to live in Japan long term, I need to get a job. To get a job, I need to study. Now that's a good thing to do to make your chances better, of course, to learn Japanese. It's not guaranteed though. In order to get a boyfriend, a girlfriend, that's yoni. Because again, you can't guarantee it. There's not you do this happens. It's not transactional in the way that buying a ticket gets you into the movie theater. Or, going, and let me give you a slightly different example. This is maybe not the best example, but I'm trying to write it without using more difficult Japanese, which is making it hard. I want to use something else, but I'll keep it simple, which makes me keep falling back to the hitsuyo word. 駅に着くためにタクシーが必要です. So maybe there's a train station that's a bit too far. You can't walk. You don't have a car. So if you have a taxi, if you get the taxi, then you'll be able to get there. And that's a reasonable assumption, unless, the taxi could crash. It could crash. Godzilla could step on it. So nothing is 100% in life, but it's a pretty safe bet. If you get in the taxi and you say, hey, I want to go to the station, they'll get you to the station. Yoni, however, is used for those times where, even in English, if we were to say, hey, in order to, I would do this, but it's not guaranteed. Making friends, getting a good job, becoming rich, becoming happy, getting into university, opening a business. Sure, you could use tame ni because there's specific things you do to open a business. To have a successful business, now that's harder. That you can't guarantee. You would use yoni for that. Tame ni would refer to, filling out the papers, buying the location for your store, your office, and whatnot. Yoni would be advertising. Yoni would be having good prices. Those will help, hopefully, have a successful business. So I hope I've kind of gone all over the place, but I hope this clarifies a bit how we use these. Now, the cool thing with yoni and tame ni is the structure of the sentences are exactly the same. Exactly the same. And you saw that with the example I gave before with passing the JLPT. You put the goal, you put that goal in front of yoni or in front of tame ni, and then you put the action afterwards. It's just tame ni is more of a guarantee, yoni is more of a hope. You do see hitsuo. I was avoiding all the other have to, must verb formations because we haven't covered them yet in these lessons. But I probably use those. I probably wouldn't say, because it feels a bit too formal. A taxi is required. I'd probably say you need to ride a taxi or you need to call a taxi. But I'm trying to stick to the grammar that we've covered in these lessons so far, which is why hitsuo keeps coming back. It's a simpler structure. Anyway, we are at the end of the lesson. We ended actually the lesson 20 minutes ago, but we added a little bit about yoni. So if there are no questions, we'll go ahead and wrap things up. But if you do have a question, feel free to toss it out now. Otherwise, the lesson will be later today or sometime soon, will be available inside the Discord under server events. And it will be available inside of Renshu. Again, if you go to Renshu, here under resources and Japanese lessons, it's down in here, and it'll appear right here. We're about halfway through. We're getting there. Now, to those that were asking about kara and the difference between like tame and kara, we're going to talk about other cause and effect elements next time. So we'll probably hit on that a little bit when we jump to that. So that will come. And that question I'll answer after the lesson. But let me see if there are any questions related to this lesson today. Looks like we might be good. So, okay. Thank you so much for joining today's lesson. I hope it helped out, and I hope to see you next time. Thanks so much.